which is the gracilis, and this is the thick one, which is the semi-T. So we will start with graft preparation, and I will show you how I do it. Okay, so as you know, whenever you do a ACL, you need some kind of scale measure. So I'll advise you to keep the steel scale. It's a very useful tool in preparation of the graft, and I'll show you how this can be used to make the graft preparation very easy. So you keep the graft on the graft tensioning board. You can see this strip. So keep this side up and then use the end of the scale to take away all the muscle belly. So just like this, keep doing it. And you can see within seconds the fiber of the muscles are almost completely gone. So I find this is the best and the easiest way without using any specialized device to get rid of muscle fibers within seconds. So once you have prepared the graft, don't let it dry. So keep them in some saline and cover it. So we have prepared our semi-T and we have put it in saline, and now we are going to move on to our gracilis graft. So same way, we are just going to use the end of the scale, and you can see within seconds, it's not even 10 seconds, the graft, all the muscle fibers are completely gone. So this is the best tool for preparation of a graft. Next step will be to free the graft from the fiber wire that you had initially put to harvest the graft. Our gracilis is free, and the same way we will free our semi-T. So next step is to measure the length. So I can see that this is measuring roughly around 30, and same here, this is measuring, the gracilis graft is measuring around 27. So the minimum graft length that we need to prepare is around 9 centimeters. So we can make this 3 stand and add 2 stands. So we are going to use 5 stand graft on this occasion. So now we have put our semi-T graft onto this tensioner, and you can see we use Ethibond to prepare the graft. We don't have that ready-made loop which makes the job easy. So we use the end, just the paper of the Ethibond, and put it on top of the graft to minimize crushing, and we have used it on both the ends. So this is the next step, and then we'll start with our preparation. So now we use the Ethibond. So start on one end, so we go outside and then this comes out. So just pay attention, and we just leave a loop here. So you want to take around 3 or 4 bites. So we'll just go on one side and try to take somewhere around 1/3 of the tendon. So this is our second loop gone. This is our third loop gone. The same way I am going to take around 4 or 5 bites, and I will show you how it looks. So I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4 bites, and this is how it will look. And to reverse, now if you want to reverse, start the same thing in the opposite direction. So this will come out like this. Just make sure you don't lock your stitch. So this is our first one. This is the second gone. Same way, you're just coming back, and I'll show you how it looks in the end. So if you have prepared a graft well, then this is how it should look. It should look like a V, and this is extremely strong. So this is how you prepare. One side we are going to do it same way on all the ends of both semi-T as well as gracilis. So if you want your loop to become V, then when you're coming back, your starting point will be at the start where the other side V is. So if you go like this and then pull it out, then it will form a V where it is. So if I will be just getting close and coming out from the V from the other side, and make sure you don't lock it. In this way, your force distribution will be better, and your graft will look something like this, and it looks pretty good. So pay attention. So this is my last stitch gone, and this is the other end, and look, looks beautiful. So this is our graft prepared. We have put Ethibond on both ends of semi-T and gracilis. Now we are going to measure the size. So now, as I said, because our graft length was good, so we are going to make it triple layer. So we have used just by rough dividing into 3 segments, and then we are going to make it a 3 layer. So this is purely semi-T at the moment. Start moving. So I am holding this end and this end, my assistant is holding the other end, and then we are going to slide it to make it a 3 layer. So this is triple layer of semi-T. This in itself looks pretty good. So now I am going to use our graceless graft. So I am going to pass it in between these 2 loops, take this out on one end, and then pass it back to my assistant to make it 5 strand. And he's just going to readjust it to make it equal. So this is roughly our graft prepared for our ACL reconstruction. So as I said before that we wanted at least 9. So from here we have got 9. In fact, we have got more than 9. So our graft length looks pretty good. Now let's check the diameter. So this is the device that tells us which diameter it is. So I'm just roughly going to start with 8 first. And 8 is not going, so it means it's more than 8. So let's move on to 8.5. 8.5 is also slightly tight. So let's move on to 9. 9 is looking pretty good on the femoral side. So this side is 9. Today we are going to use an Indian made endo button. So some people get confused about what is the tunnel length and how much to drill. So the rough guess is today's our tunnel length is around 30 that we have measured. We are going to use an endo button which is of 15 mm. So what you do is you decrease 30 minus 15, so that will give us 15. So tunnel length minus endo button length is 15, plus you need extra 10 mm for endo button to flip on the outside. So you are going to use or drill up to 25. So this is the mathematics behind the calculation if you're using an Indian system. However, if you're using Arthrex, then you can decide the endo button, you can decide the tunnel length depending upon what you want, and then the tight rope will tighten on itself. So this is one end of the endo button. So this from here to here is 15 mm. I'm just going to take one arthric clip, and I'm just going to take one end of an Ethibond of the hamstring graft. So just one end, and then we are going to tie it here. So just few sliding knots. So really tight. So this is one end, and so we're going to put 3 or 4 sutures. So we're just going to tie at one end. So once we have tied that end, we are just going to cut it. So that's one end of the hamstring or the semi-T tendon is tied onto the endo button. So once you have tied one end through this loop, take the other end of the semi-T and then take the graft through this loop. So once you have taken it through the loop, adjust it as you would adjust for a 3-strand graft. So just keep pulling it, and my assistant is going to just put a suture here. Just put a suture here, and then we are going to adjust it to a 3-strand graft. So this is our semi-T graft done. So next stage, we are going to pass our gracilis graft to make it 5-strand. Now this is our preparation done. So our tunnel length is 25. As I said, we need this 10 mm to flip the graft. So I'm just going to make a mark of around 25 just to give us a feedback. So this is 10, 20, 25. So this is where the graft will flip. So now I've showed you how to prepare a graft on an Indian endo button. This is an Arthrex tightrope. We are using it in the other case. The loop here is bigger. The loop maximum is around 55 mm, but you can adjust the loop depending upon your tunnel length. That is one advantage. So if your graft is short, then you can bury it less in the femoral tunnel. If it's long, you can bury it more. Just like the Indian endo button, we have passed the artery clip through this loop, and then we are going to tie the semi-T graft with some sliding sutures as shown in the previous section. So it's going to remain the same. So again we are going to cut it. Now we have tied one end of the semi-T. On this occasion our graft is quite thin, but length is good, so we will try to make it a 6 strand. So because they are of the same length, I have passed one end of the gracilis graft as well, and then we are going to tie and cut it in the same way. So now we have tied both ends, and like the other graft, we are just going to pass it through this loop, and I am going to hand it to my assistant, while assistant will put a loop here so as to make it a 6 strand to increase the thickness. That's our graft ready. So now our graft is prepared. We have loaded it. We have tied few sutures so that the graft remains together. Now 2 important marks that you need to make, especially when you're using an Arthrex tightrope, is first is a tunnel length. So we measured our tunnel length to be around 32. So we have marked it at 32 from here, so that we know that once this disappears, then our endo button should be flipped. We should be able to flip it. And the second thing is that we have put a mark here around 20 because we want to bury around 20 within the bone. So we have put an arrow here so that we know we have buried the amount of ACL that we want to bury.